Hi everyone. I'm Fergus McAllister. I look after the flexibility team in EDF Wholesale Market Services. Today I want to talk to you about batteries. Why do I want to talk about batteries? Well, A, I love batteries, and B, the market loves batteries. We need batteries for the energy transition. CP30 says we need over 25 gigawatts of the stuff in 5 years' time. And at the moment, we've got about 5 gigawatts. So we need a massive amount of increase, a five-fold increase in the amount of batteries. So today, we'll talk about what the kind of revenue streams are available to a battery, how we go about as an optimizer, optimizing batteries, and we'll also delve into whether it's worth investing in batteries as an I&C consumer. Just before I do that, just to touch on who we are in Wholesale Market Services. So there's kind of 4 strings to our bow. So the first is we provide a route to market effectively. We access carbon, gas, power markets. We do all the hedging activity for EDF internally and for our customers, a big kind of flex I&C customers. We also provide asset optimization services. So this is really providing a route to market for large-scale distributed generation assets, as well as battery storage. So we're the largest battery storage optimizer in the UK. The third one is very prevalent for today. So building a virtual power plant. So we have a virtual power plant where we can aggregate lots of small, flexible assets up into these tradable blocks, which allows us to access behind-the-meter flexibility, which I'll come on to. And finally, we also provide the power purchase agreements, and we're one of the largest off-taker of power purchase agreements. Good. A bit of history then. So 9 years ago, a group of 3 of us, myself included, were sat in a room trying to figure out what on earth this whole flexibility gig was all about. And we did a lot of work with Ofgem, lots of work with NESO, invested heavily in a tech stack, and built a suite of products and services that enabled us to tap into every form of flexibility. So if you're scratching your heads as to what we mean by flexibility, I mean any form of technology that can quickly increase or reduce energy. And the reason for that is it helps renewables grow. It's basically, I look at it as the twin to renewables. You can't have one without the other. You've got to fill the gaps. So there are 5 different forms of flexibility. So you've got domestic flexibility, everything from your EVs in your house to heat pumps to battery storage and solar on your roof. We've got I&C flexibility. So again, anything from batteries, very very much worth investing in, as well as heat and fleet as well. So those 2 orange segments are kind of what we look at as behind the meter flexibility. And most of the time, they're not big enough, those assets on their own. So you have to aggregate these things up into this kind of virtual power plant. We also provide flex services to thermal forms of flexibility, as well as renewables. And now renewables can provide an element of flexibility, particularly wind. When there's too much wind on the system behind a constraint, for example, you actually need to tailor that wind down, unfortunately. And that's where batteries come in. Now, grid-scale batteries is really what our flagship has kind of gotten us to where we are today at EDF. And we've put a lot of attention into grid-scale batteries. And I think today we can talk about how grid-scale batteries and I&C batteries, actually there's a lot of synergies between them, and the optimization that sits behind the scenes is one and the same in many regards. We bring all this together through something called PowerShift, which is that thing at the top. So PowerShift it's a capability, it's a solution. It brings together AI, automation, forecasting and market access, and then the ability to remote control into all of these different assets to then access all of the markets and make as much value for our customers as possible. Just a quick touch on some credentials, I suppose, for where we're at on the grid scale world. So as at today, we have 2 gigawatts of the stuff contracted. 1 gigawatt of that is live. So we've got about 20% of the market share. Just to put it into perspective, a gigawatt of batteries, if I were to discharge all those batteries at the same time, that's enough to power like 3 or 4 million homes in the space of a few hours. So it's looking pretty big, but the market needs to increase massively, and there's lots of investment going in, as I'm sure you're aware, into battery storage. We've got many different customers, so lots of our customers are kind of large developers, but we also have anything from kind of small 200 kilowatt sites. We've got some behind the meter batteries with large supermarket chain and looking to expand that part of the business. But the world of batteries has moved on so much in the last 5-10 years, where we used to have batteries, we thought a 6 megawatt battery was big, but now we're dealing with 300 megawatts in a single site. So the scale of these things is rapidly increasing. And no one battery is the same. So as an optimizer, we have to be really aware of all the different characteristics, all the warranties. We have to respect every element of those batteries, different durations. And because of that, there's many different kind of revenue streams that are accessible. So what do they look like? It's a bit of a busy page, but there's many different revenue streams available to battery storage. At the top, we've got ancillary services. So we're on an alternating current system. NESO have a really important job of keeping system frequency stable at 50 hertz. When there's too much generation or too much demand, that frequency can deviate a lot. Now, with the increase of renewables, that's made it much more difficult for them to keep that frequency at 50 hertz. So they have a number of services, dynamic containment, moderation, and regulation, which basically batteries are perfect for, because batteries can quickly respond within a second, and some of these services require that level of response. That market used to be the main revenue stream for batteries, but it's started to become saturated, so much so that actually the most value now comes from trading it in the wholesale market, whether it's the day-ahead market, re-optimizing that within the within-day market, and also accessing something called the balancing mechanism. Alongside trading it, there are reserve services, so holding back volume to make sure you can support grid when they need it. So you've got balancing reserve and something called quick reserve, which has recently come in, which is making us a good bit of money for our customers. Capacity market, again, it's the low-hanging fruit. Most of the large developers do their own capacity market contracts, but we provide that for our kind of smaller I&C customers. And I think one of the really interesting ones here is around non-energy costs. So particularly for behind the meter, non-energy costs, I will be managing my battery and discharging into the periods where my load consumption is the most expensive. So regardless of whether you're on a fixed tariff or a pass-through tariff with your non-energy costs, you can still reap the benefits of making sure that you're discharging behind the meter into the evening peak, typically where things like Duos are most expensive. Very briefly on this one then, so how do we optimize a battery? So there's a number of different variables and there's a bit of a time horizon. And it all starts at day -2. So we build a view, a forecast, and build a number of strategies for our assets. Like I said, no asset is alike. So there's no one strategy that we can do on our whole fleet. We have to tailor that approach each time. It all then kicks off at the day ahead stage, day -1, because there's a number of different markets that we need to tender into or trade into. And I can't be doing the same megawatt. I can't tender the same megawatt in an ancillary service and then trade that same megawatt. But what I can do is I can split my asset up into chunks and choose to trade some of it and choose to tender it into other markets. So there's thousands of different variations of different strategies. It's a pretty competitive market. So we need to be making sure that we're keeping on top of the various leaderboards and keeping track of what our competition are doing as well. And then when it gets into the within-day market, that's when you can then re-optimize against the position you've already hedged in the within-day market, where there's typically a little bit more volatility. And batteries love volatility. They love the spreads. So within the strategy, there's 6 key things that kind of go into it. Lots of forecasting. So if you get your forecasting right, you make the most value. Simple as that. So you need to forecast what the ancillary markets are going to be. You need to forecast what the trading markets, the wholesale markets are going to be. The balancing mechanism as well. And then also think about what competitors are doing, what behaviour they're doing on what strategies they're undertaking, as well as what our customers, their level of risk is. So there's a number of different variables there, and you can't do it manually. Like we've invested millions into automated solutions that can really optimize all of this fleet efficiently. So, what does it mean for an I&C battery? So on the screen here, you can see a bit of a business case, if you like, of an I&C battery. Do take it with a pinch of salt. Like I said, each asset is individual and needs to be valued individually. But this particular case study, let's have a quick look at. So this is a 2.5 megawatt baseload demand, pretty baseloady. So it's got a 23 gigawatt hour EAC, which is annual consumption. And what they're looking to do is put a 3 megawatt battery behind their site. And it's also paired with solar on the roof. So it needs to make sure that it's optimizing with the solar output on the roof. Now, typically for a 3 megawatt battery, or generally for a battery, the cost is about £400 per kilowatt. And the cost is coming down. Over the last 5 years, the cost has been steadily coming down. So for a 3 megawatt battery, you're looking at about 1.2 million in investment. However, there's a number of revenues available. Now, in this particular stack, most of those revenues are coming from the wholesale market and non-energy costs, because you need to pair when you're optimizing the market price as well as the different non-energy costs tailored to that site. And then on top of that, we've got benefits from the balancing mechanism, from a little bit from ancillary services, the capacity market and other reserve services. So really stacking all of these different revenue streams together. So our view is that in this particular case, there's about a 7 to 8 year payback, which isn't bad, and it's come a long way. I'd say 6 years ago, when prices of batteries were pretty chunky, I wouldn't have suggested investing from behind the meter. But today, I think it's really interesting, and if you'd like to discuss particularly your situation, then I'm happy to. I'll be here afterwards. I think lastly, I like to end on this slide because this is really about innovation, and I've talked about the technology side, but for us, innovation is very much about the people, and there's a number of different calibers and qualities and skills that we need as an optimizer to really make this thing fit together. We need everything from regulatory people that can lobby for our customers and make sure we're bringing the best new regulations and policies through for our customers. Product development, bringing new products to market, things like revenue guarantees, like revenue floors is a good example of that. Building partnerships and operations, so in the grid scale world particularly crucial. The traders bring a lot of value. So the traders, the world's kind of moved a little bit from where the trader used to kind of manually create set points and then choose between entering into, say, the wholesale market or the balancing mechanism. Now that it's so much more automated, the role of the trader is really to have oversight of the algorithm doing its thing. So the trader is really now acting as a market subject matter expert, as opposed to the person pressing the button to trade here or trade there. Mixed with that, there's lots of tech that goes into this. So we need subject matter experts in the different markets, software engineers, of course, and data science as well. Now, this world is becoming ever more data hungry, as we were saying earlier. So data science is an absolutely hot skill that I'm sure will only need to continue and increase in the future. I think that's my time. But if you want to follow us as a QR code, and I'll take questions after.